The cab dropped me at the end of the driveway just after sunset. Same mailbox. Same oak tree. Same porch light my wife always left on for me. For a second, everything felt normal. Then I noticed the moving truck. 2 men were carrying a couch out of my living room. I stood there longer than I should have, waiting for my brain to correct what my eyes were seeing. Maybe wrong house. Maybe neighbor's place. Then I saw my daughter's drawing taped to the window. My house. I walked faster. The front door wasn't my door anymore. A black keypad lock replaced the handle I installed before deployment. A bright red notice was taped across the frame. Possession restored, HOA authority. I read it 3 times. It didn't start making sense the 3rd time either. A man stepped out behind the movers and looked at me like I was lost. "Can I help you?" I almost laughed. The sound got stuck somewhere in my throat. "I live here." He didn't answer. Instead, red and blue lights flashed across the yard. A police cruiser rolled up behind me. The officer stepped out slowly. Calm voice. Careful hands. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step away from the property." I stared at my own front door, while a stranger's couch passed me on the way out. I had just come home from overseas. And apparently, I wasn't allowed inside. Before we go further, if you believe no one should come home from serving their country to find strangers in their house, tap like and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, what would you do in my place right now? Because what happened next only worked because I didn't react the way they expected. 3 weeks earlier, my biggest worry was sand getting into my boots, not whether my family still had a place to sleep. The house wasn't fancy. Single story. White siding. A porch I built the summer before my last deployment. My daughter helped paint the railing, badly, and I never fixed it. That house was the plan. Every overtime shift. Every missed holiday. Every extra tour. It all went into that mortgage. The HOA letters started small. My wife mentioned them on video calls like background noise. Trash cans visible. Grass height violation. Mailbox repaint required. I remember nodding while checking my watch because my call window was closing. "Just send them whatever they want," I told her. She said she tried. But the letters didn't stop. They changed tone. Then came the certified envelopes. I didn't open most of them. Bad Wi-Fi, bad timing, bad assumption that problems wait for you to come home. One night she sounded different. Quiet. They said the house looks abandoned. I laughed. Lights on timers. Car in driveway. Cameras on porch. How could it look abandoned? She didn't answer right away. They took pictures while we were at the grocery store. I told her it was intimidation. HOAs did that sometimes. I'd handle it when I got back. 2 weeks later her calls got shorter. Then they stopped being video. Phone only. Then mostly texts. The last message before my flight home was simple. "We're staying with my sister for a few days until this is sorted." I thought it was temporary pressure. I didn't know they had already changed the locks. And by the time I landed, someone else had the keys to everything I built. The officer didn't put his hand on his weapon, but he didn't relax either. "Sir, the homeowner requested you leave." For a second I honestly thought he was joking. "I am the homeowner." He glanced at the paper in his hand, then back at the man standing in my doorway, the one holding my screen door open like he'd lived there for years. According to this, the officer said carefully, possession was transferred this morning. Transferred. Like a package. I felt heat rise in my neck. Not anger yet, confusion trying to turn into anger. My wife pulled up behind the cruiser. She got out fast, walked toward me, then slowed when she saw the police. "They said we couldn't come back," she whispered. "They told me it was legal." I looked at the red notice again. HOA seal at the bottom. Signatures. A case number. It looked official enough to make you hesitate. So I stepped back from the door. The officer relaxed slightly. The stranger inside closed the door, gently, like he was afraid I'd break. That's when Hope showed up. Mr. Darnell from across the street shuffled over with a folder tucked under his arm. "I figured you'd be home today," he said quietly. "They posted these at the clubhouse." Inside were printed emails, meeting notes, a scheduled vacancy enforcement action, my name typed neatly in the middle. I felt the ground come back under my feet. "They can't do this," I said, mostly to myself. Then the HOA president arrived. Perfect timing. Marla walked across the lawn in a blazer like this was a planned appointment. She smiled, polite, practiced, public. "Welcome home," she said softly. "I recommend you don't escalate the situation." Not escalate. Like I was the risk here. I held up the papers. "You removed my family." She didn't even look at them. "You failed to respond to repeated notices." The board followed procedure. The officer shifted his weight again. Then Marla added, almost gently, "You can appeal next month." Next month. Behind her, through my living room window, I watched movers carry out my dining table, the one my daughter carved her initials under. And I realized the real threat wasn't the lock. It was time. The next morning I went straight to the county records office. The clerk behind the glass barely looked up when I gave her my address. She typed, frowned slightly, then printed a stack of papers thicker than it should have been. "There was a filing," she said. "I expected a lien. Maybe unpaid fines. Something annoying but fixable. Instead I saw a possession order. Filed 2 weeks earlier. Granted by default. Reason, property abandonment and safety concern." I read the line twice, then checked the service affidavit attached to it. Defendant personally notified at residence. I stared at the date. That day. I was on the other side of the world. For a moment hope returned, sharp and clear. "They lied," I said out loud. The clerk gave the kind of nod that wasn't agreement, just familiarity. I pulled up my deployment orders on my phone. Location stamps. Unit confirmation email. Photos with timestamps. Proof I wasn't even in the country. For the first time since the driveway, I felt like this could end quickly. Then I drove back past my house. Survey flags covered the yard. Bright orange lines cut across the grass, not around the property, through it. 2 workers were measuring from my porch to the sidewalk while a man in a clean polo shirt studied a tablet. I parked and walked over. "Can I help you?" he asked, the same way you talk to someone at the wrong place. "This is my property." He smiled politely. "Not according to the development map." He turned the tablet toward me. A rendering showed a stone entrance sign for the neighborhood, landscaped, lit, decorative. Placed exactly where my living room stood. My stomach dropped slower this time. Because now it wasn't confusion. It was planning. As I stepped back, a truck pulled up carrying lumber. And I understood something worse than losing a house. They weren't waiting for the appeal. They were building over the problem. That night I didn't go to a hotel. I parked across the street. I told myself I was just watching the contractors, but I never took my eyes off the living room window. A lamp was on inside. Not my bulb. Not my lampshade. Someone else had decided how bright my house should be. I tried counting normal things. Cars passing. Porch lights switching off. The rhythm you relearn after deployment. But every time the front door opened, my chest tightened before my brain caught up. My wife texted, "Come stay with us tonight." I typed back soon and never sent it. Because leaving felt like agreeing. I kept replaying the officer's voice, "Step away from the property." I'd followed orders my whole adult life. Clear commands. Clear authority. This didn't feel clear. Part of me wanted to pound on the door, not angry, just desperate enough to make reality line back up. Another part kept picturing handcuffs and neighbors filming. They already expected a reaction. That realization bothered me more than the lock. I opened the folder Mr. Darnell gave me and read slower this time. Meeting agendas. Inspection dates. A calendar entry labeled enforcement window. Not complaints. Scheduling. I leaned back in the seat and stared at the roofline I'd repaired after a storm years ago. If this was planned, then reacting fast was exactly what they needed. For the first time since coming home, I stopped trying to get inside and started trying to understand why they were so sure I wouldn't fight the right way. The HOA meeting was scheduled for Thursday night. Same clubhouse where they held holiday potlucks and yard of the month photos. I hadn't been inside since before deployment. The parking lot was full when I arrived. People didn't wave this time. They watched. I stayed in the car a full minute longer than necessary, reading the printed agenda Mr. Darnell handed me. Item 4, Vacant Property Enforcement Follow-up. My address. I walked in without the uniform. Just jeans and a plain shirt. I didn't want applause. I didn't want sympathy. I wanted them to keep talking like they had been. The room quieted anyway. Marla sat at the front table beside two board members and a man I hadn't seen before, clean suit, legal pad, developer logo on his folder. She gave the same polite smile from the driveway. We ask everyone to remain respectful tonight. The first 10 minutes were landscaping budgets and parking complaints. Normal meeting sounds. Then she cleared her throat. Next, enforcement action at lot 27. Not my name. A number. She began describing the property as abandoned. Repeated noncompliance. Safety concern for the community. Each sentence sounded rehearsed, like she'd said it before. When she finished, she looked around the room. No further action is required at this time. I stood up. Not fast. Just enough to make chairs shift. I live at lot 27. No one spoke. I placed a thin stack of papers on the table in front of her, the county filing, my deployment orders, the service affidavit. Her eyes flicked over them, but she didn't pick them up. This says I was personally served, I said quietly. I was overseas that day. The suited man leaned forward. This is not the forum. I didn't look at him. I'm not arguing. I'm correcting the record. A murmur spread through the chairs. Marla kept her voice calm. You were given proper notice through multiple channels. I slid a photo across the table, timestamp visible. Desert background. Date matching the affidavit. She didn't touch that one either. Instead, she folded her hands. You can pursue legal remedies outside this meeting. Which sounded reasonable. Until Mr. Darnell spoke from the back. Then why did the board schedule the lock change before the hearing date? Heads turned. Marla's smile thinned. Sir, please limit comments to residents. I am a resident, he replied, holding up a printed email. This came from the HOA portal. He read the line aloud. Vacancy enforcement window approved pending owner absence. The room shifted. The suited man stood halfway. That message is being misinterpreted. I finally looked at him. Then explain it. He didn't. Instead he said, you're creating tension in the community. That word again. Tension. I felt it too, not anger, something heavier. The sense everyone realized they'd heard one version of events. A woman near the front raised her hand slowly. You told us the family moved out voluntarily. My wife inhaled sharply beside me. Marla answered without hesitation. We were informed they vacated. They didn't, my wife said, voice shaking but steady enough. We were told not to return. Phones started coming out. The suited man noticed first. Recording isn't permitted. It is, someone replied from the back. State law. The sound in the room changed. Less meeting. More witnessing. I opened the folder and removed the last page, the development rendering from the survey crew's tablet. I set it upright against the water pitcher. The entrance monument illustration sat exactly where my house stood. Silence landed. I hadn't planned to show that yet. But the room needed to see motive, not paperwork. Marla finally lost the smile. "That's a preliminary concept," she said quickly. "For a property you declared abandoned," I answered. The suited man gathered his folder. "This discussion is over." But nobody moved. Because a maintenance worker near the door spoke up. "They had us take pictures from the alley," he said. "Board said the front made it look occupied." I went back to the table. Marla's composure slipped just enough to notice. "Maintenance operations are not open for." He kept going. "They told us the owner was gone long-term. Not hostile. Not dramatic. Just factual. And facts travel differently in a quiet room." The board members stopped making eye contact with each other. For the first time since I came home, they looked unsure what would happen next. I didn't raise my voice. I just asked one question. If the house was empty, why was construction scheduled before the appeal date? No one answered. The meeting didn't end with a gavel. It ended with people standing in small circles, comparing what they'd been told. As we walked out, I realized something had shifted. They still had my house. But they no longer had the story. We were almost to the parking lot when Mr. Darnell caught my arm. "Wait," he said, digging back into his folder. "There was one more thing I didn't print earlier. Didn't think it mattered." He handed me a single page, not from the portal, not formatted like the others. An email. No HOA header. Just forwarded text. Subject line, entry monument, lot confirmed. My address sat underneath it. I read it once, then again slower. If the owner returns, enforcement must already be completed. Construction schedule cannot slip. The sender wasn't Marla. It was the developer's project manager. My first thought was simple: they were in a hurry. But the timestamp changed that. The message was sent 3 weeks before the violation hearing was even scheduled. Before the last warning letter. Before the photos they claimed proved abandonment. I felt my stomach drop in a completely different way than earlier. Not shock. Pattern. My wife read over my shoulder. "They already decided," she whispered. Another line sat below the first, shorter. "Board confirmed cooperation." I looked back through the clubhouse windows. Marla was inside talking quickly to the suited man, both of them watching the crowd forming around the maintenance worker. A few minutes ago I thought they rushed the process to deal with a problem. Now it looked like they created the problem to fit a deadline. The lock change, the notices, the police waiting. Not enforcement. Scheduling. And for the first time since landing home, I understood something uncomfortable. They hadn't been reacting to my absence. They had been preparing for my return. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of anger, because the timeline wouldn't leave me alone. Every letter, every photo, every step they took had happened on specific days. Not random enforcement, intervals. Morning, I went back to the county records office. This time I didn't ask for my property file. I asked for the HOAs. The clerk hesitated longer before printing those. Incorporation amendments. Meeting minutes. Insurance filings. Vendor contracts. One line repeated across multiple documents. Community Improvement Grant, Caldwell Communities. The developer. At first I thought it was landscaping sponsorship, HOAs loved those. Then I noticed the dates. The grant was approved 2 days before the first violation letter was sent to my house. I leaned closer to the glass. "Do you have payment attachments?" She printed another page, a scanned check copy. Memo line, entry monument phase authorization. My address sat handwritten beside it. For a moment my brain tried to rationalize it. Maybe the sign location wasn't final yet. Then I opened the email from Mr. Darnell again and matched the timestamp. They didn't choose my lot because it became vacant. They declared it vacant because they'd already chosen my lot. I walked outside and just stood on the sidewalk holding the papers. Cars passed. Nobody noticed the moment everything stopped being coincidence. That afternoon, I met a lawyer recommended by another veteran in the comments section of the meeting video someone had posted overnight. I expected a long explanation. She flipped through the packet silently instead. Stopped at the affidavit. Then the grant payment. Then the email. She leaned back. They didn't just remove you, she said. They needed you removed on a schedule. I waited for legal jargon. It didn't come. Look at the dates, she continued, tapping the pages in order. Grant approved. Violation issued. Hearing delayed. Service falsified. Lockout executed. Construction crew scheduled. Each step matched the developer's construction calendar, printed on the brochure rendering I'd photographed. Not HOA timing. Construction timing. I felt something colder than anger settle in. So they rushed paperwork, I said. She shook her head slightly. No, she replied. They built paperwork to justify a decision already sold. 2 days later another piece surfaced. The tenant living in my house, the man who asked who I was listed on a contractor invoice in the HOA records. Temporary occupancy supervision. Not renter. Not buyer. Site control. They hadn't replaced me. They had installed a placeholder. Someone whose job was to keep the property legally in possession while they prepared construction. Which explained the police waiting the day I arrived. They weren't removing a trespasser. They were protecting a project timeline. The next surprise came from the restraining order attempt. They filed it anyway, claiming I intimidated board members at the meeting. But attached to their filing was a still image from security footage. Supposed proof. Only it showed more than they intended. In the background, partially visible on a wall behind Marla, was a printed project calendar. Color-coded phases. One label readable even in the grainy copy. Lot 27 clearance. Dated a full week before the abandonment inspection photos were taken. My lawyer stared at it for a long moment before smiling slightly for the first time. They just gave us intent, she said. I thought the worst part was losing my home. It wasn't. The worst part was realizing every interaction since I landed had been structured, from the officer already present to the calm tone they kept using. They didn't want confrontation. They wanted predictability. Because predictable reactions are easy to manage legally. Unpredictable documentation isn't. For the first time, the situation flipped in my mind. I wasn't fighting an HOA that made a bad decision. I was interrupting a transaction. And once that became clear, every small thing they'd done, every polite word, every delayed response, stopped feeling personal. It felt procedural. Which meant the outcome they expected depended entirely on me behaving the way their plan required. So I didn't escalate. I documented. And the moment paperwork started telling a different story than their timeline. The project stopped being about a house. It became evidence. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. No dramatic echoes. Just papers, chairs, and a judge already reading before anyone spoke. For a second I worried the room wouldn't match the size of what happened. Then the HOA lawyer stood and began confidently. Your Honor, this is a simple enforcement matter. The judge raised a hand without looking up. Counsel, it stopped being simple several filings ago. First shift. My lawyer didn't start with speeches. She started with the affidavit. She slid it forward. This states my client was personally served at his residence. Then she placed my deployment orders beside it. Same date. Different continent. The judge leaned closer, reading silently longer than comfortable. The HOA lawyer spoke carefully now. There may have been a clerical errors don't cross oceans, the judge replied. The process server was called. He cleared his throat twice before answering basic questions. He described the house, the porch, the mailbox. All accurate, details anyone could gather from a photo. Then my lawyer asked one thing. What did the homeowner say when you handed him the papers? Silence. He blinked. Looked at the HOA table. There was no conversation. Because there had been no person. The judge wrote something down. Second shift. Next came the possession order. The HOA attorney argued the board acted on abandonment for community safety. My lawyer placed the email on the evidence stand, the one from the developer. Enforcement must already be completed. Construction schedule cannot slip. The judge read it once. Then again slower. Counsel, she asked the HOA table, why does a construction schedule exist before a violation hearing? No one answered immediately. The developer's attorney attempted control. Preliminary planning. My lawyer overlaid the survey map with the development rendering. My living room sat directly beneath the illustrated stone entrance monument. Not near it. On it. The judge leaned back for the first time. Third shift. Witnesses followed. Mr. Darnell described the posted enforcement window. The maintenance worker explained the staged abandonment photos, instructions to shoot only from angles where cars weren't visible. Then the security still image appeared on the screen. Grainy. But clear enough. Behind the HOA president on the wall. Lot 27 clearance, scheduled before inspection date. The courtroom changed temperature. The HOA lawyer stopped objecting. The judge looked directly at Marla. Were you aware of this schedule prior to the hearing? Her pause lasted just slightly too long. Yes, but... The judge held up her hand again. Fourth shift. The ruling didn't come dramatically. It came line by line. The possession order, vacated. Service, deemed invalid. Enforcement, conducted in bad faith. Then she paused before the last section. This court finds the association coordinated removal of a lawful occupant to meet a private development timeline. You could hear someone in the back exhale. Sanctions followed. Immediate restoration of property access. Financial penalties. Referral for further review of the affidavit filing. No shouting. No speeches. Just consequences written into record. I didn't feel victorious. I felt steady. Because for the first time since stepping onto my driveway, reality matched what I was seeing. As we stood to leave, the judge added one final sentence, not loud, but impossible to miss. Service members do not surrender their homes while serving their country. And just like that, the plan they built around my absence collapsed in a single morning. The lock they installed came off the same afternoon. A locksmith hired by the HOA avoided eye contact while handing me the new keys, temporary, he said, until they replaced the whole mechanism again. This time legally. The door opened slower than I remembered. Inside felt smaller. Not damaged, just rearranged by people who never expected me to return. My daughter's drawings were stacked on the counter. Our couch sat pushed against the wrong wall. Little signs someone treated it like a workspace, not a home. My wife walked in behind me and stopped in the hallway. Neither of us spoke for a while. Winning didn't feel loud. It felt quiet, like the pressure leaving a room. Outside, the survey flags were already gone. The developer's sign disappeared the next morning. A week later, the HOA announced a board restructuring meeting. Neighbors started waving again, unsure at first, then normally. That night I fixed the porch light timer back to the way it used to be. Nothing dramatic. Just the light turning on at the right time, because it was ours again.